Hello, this is Professor Kim Nelson with the Jewelry Design Department of the Fashion Institute of Technology. Um, Submitting another tutorial for JD237, 3D CAD modeling. This tutorial will follow the previous installment that was a review of what I call the Maurice ring project. I'm going to start the actual modeling now. So first step is to bring in the image from that previous review. So viewport layout, background bitmap. Pick the image that I've posted for you online. I don't care how large the image ends up being. There we go. I do want to be able to position this accurately. So I'm going to take the one thing I can get from Maurice's image that has accuracy to me, or means accuracy to me, and that would be his ring bore. So I'm going to come in here, grab the furthest point of his ellipse. Part of this ellipse is going to be caught up inside of the ring, so I'm going to kind of trace along to where I think Maurice's furthest extent of that ellipse would be. I think something like that is reasonable. Okay, I need to draw a circle that is that same size, so going to analyze distance, quad to quad. It's a 6.4 millimeter circle. So I'll go ahead and draw that circle, center radius, center snap, middle of the ellipse, 6.4 millimeters diameter. Now I'm going to draw the size circle that I need for my ring bore, which is 17. Center of circle 0, 17 millimeters. Viewport layout, orient or align bitmap, quad snap. Going to base point on bitmap, so I'm going to use the bottom quadrant of the circle that's associated with the bitmap. Reference point, top quadrant of the circle associated with my bitmap. Base point on C-plane, bottom quadrant of the circle associated with my C-plane, and top reference point. And that will move my drawing into place and scale it for me. Just putting this on my usual front view layer. Okay, so that's a start. The next thing I need to do is I need to get some basic elements here. Going to draw a straight line. Start somewhere in the middle of this box that he has on top. Both sides. Try and get the angle more or less correct. Going to offset that curve both sides. Until it kind of fills in that top. Now remember, we discussed that part of this is the front of that piece, so I don't really want to include that. I'm not very well centered, but that's okay. I'll grab the 3 of these, position them in a more centered way, and then scale it a little bit until I think it's more accurate. Something like that. And I'm going to draw a perpendicular curve or line. Line perpendicular from curve. And once again, I'm just going to try and eyeball actually I want to select that both sides option first. And kind of eyeball how wide I think this motif is. Fillet. My curves set to 0 for the radius. Clean this little box up. join this together, use it to trim off the sides of the center line, and pick this whole thing up and put it in the middle of my drawing. And rotate it. So that it's straight. Okay, now I'm going to look at this. I know that in position this looked like it was right. I think this width is probably pretty good. But I'm going to look at the whole thing now and make a decision as to what I think looks more accurate. It's going to be easier for me. Yeah, I can work with curves. I was going to put a surface, but I'll stick with my curves for now. Do a non-uniform scale. To my eye, because remember, 3/4 view, this whole thing is being foreshortened. So it's shorter than it would actually be. To my eye, that motif feels about that wide. And I also have foreshortening going from front to back. And nothing in the z-axis. So, excuse me. I think that's a pretty good indication of what that box would be. So I have that box. Now I want to get an idea of a taper for the side here. If I weren't modeling in CAD, I could just take out calipers and measure it and then try and do it with my pencil, but this is much easier. Okay. Now a trick I use with 3/4 views sometimes is that since I see the front edge of the piece here, this is once again partially front view, partially top view. In theory, if I measure the whole distance, it should be pretty close to a straight on top view, because I'm going to gain a little bit in the top view with that extra length, but I've lost some of the top view because it's been foreshortened here. Okay, so what's the word I'm looking for? I am adjusting it to compensate for that. So I'm going to call that the top of my taper. My inside taper has also been foreshortened. So I will call it something along those lines. Going to go ahead and grab this from its midpoint, put it in the middle, rotate it, mid-end, shift key, and pull it off to the side. I don't really care how far at this point. Move this from midpoint to 0 and rotate it. Once again, midpoint, endpoint, shift key. I'm going to grab both of these and move them out to a little bit beyond the outside of my box here. And I'll go ahead and draw a trapezoid with a polyline tool. Connecting those dots, and I can throw away those reference curves. Going to mirror that over. Turn off the ring bore for now. Okay, so I'm starting to get kind of a cutout of what these different shape elements might be. Okay, I need to get a sense of this. All right, so it'd be really marvelous if they would let me orient this box shape however I want, but they won't. So I'm going to outsmart them. Right now, I'm going to put in a ellipse diameter starting in the middle of this, or the end of this middle flute, top and bottom, side to side. What I really wanted to do is just kind of line up in the direction. Remember from our seaplanes from last semester that if I line up an ellipse, I can then set the seaplane and it'll keep the same direction. Seaplane to object. There we go. Okay, so now the seaplane has lined up to follow along with this for me. Okay, so I can go ahead and do the curve tool, box from center, pick somewhere in here, and make a box that's about the right size. Once again, I'm going to encompass the whole block or the whole cuff here because the front and top 3/4 thing that's been drawn should equal averaged out to the basic top view of it. And now I'll go back to top seaplane. Now it's interesting, I don't know if you noticed, but my camera on my software is flipping and rotating as I change the seaplane. This is not something that I want it to do. If I set it to front seaplane, it gives me a front view. Right seaplane, right view. Top seaplane, top view. I don't want that. I want for my seaplane to not be hinged on my viewport. I want to see if it does the same thing in perspective view. No, it doesn't. Okay. Well, that's good. It's only doing it in my orthographic view. All right. I'm not sure why it's doing this. I did just update my software, and that may be part of it. Just going to do a couple of quick checking if anything has changed here. Pardon me for 1 minute. Standard construction planes. Okay, let's see if that changed it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, when it updated my software, it made an adjustment I didn't want it to do. Okay, so sorry. If your computer ever does that, that's where you fix it. All right, I'm going to move this into position. This collet or cuff, center snap, 0, and once again, rotate. Grab a mid, snap, and shift key. And I'm going to move this out. Now in theory, this should come right up to the edge of this. I'm going to leave a little gap. And a little gap. I should have used history when I mirrored. That would have moved up automatically for me. I'll do history now in case I need to make adjustments, further adjustments. Okay, so this is, hide my bitmap for a minute. This is a basic blocking in of that ring from the top, laid out flat, which is how I have taught you to do rings. And here is my front view, or my ring bore. I'm going to take a minute and start to compose the front view of this ring. Bring back my seaplane, my bitmap. Okay. So I want to think about elevations. This is a little bit chunky under here for what Maurice would normally do, but it's actually prime for what I would do with commercial products. So I'm going to do my standard 2mm offset. That seems awfully dainty for a 17 millimeter ring bore. So I'm just going to check. Okay, all right. It's just me. just it just doesn't seem like 2 millimeters visually to me, but okay, it is. I'm going to move this up. I want 1.6, 1.7. Let's try moving at 0.3, seeing how that looks under here, comparing it to what I see here foreshortened. I think that's going to be pretty good. Now I want to kind of get a sense of what I think he's doing here. I think he's doing it a little bit beefier than this, and I think he's got a fairly substantial elevation happening in here. So I think I can scale this outside profile a little bit. Just do a 3D scale based around quad. I think something like that. Now I want to think how much higher than the flutes I think that these collets are. And actually, as I'm looking at it, I'm not sure that scaling was a good idea. I think less of a scale. I think I went too extreme. Okay? These are subtle aesthetic choices you're going to have to make when you do the exercise yourself. But I'm thinking something like that. Now I need to have an elevation for how far these come off, or how far this comes up. I think I want the center section first. So I'm going to do an offset. Now remember, I want this to be a more subtle arch across the top. So I'll start with something modest like that, and then I'm going to scale it. Because when I scale this circle from the top quadrant, see what's happening? This line becomes flatter and flatter. And I'm going to give myself what I think would be a nice arc. I'm going to say something like that. And then I'm going to look at how that correlates to what's going to happen when I put that bracket on there. That bracket has to be higher than this piece. It's going to get really high off the ground. So I'm actually going to let this come down. I think I could literally bring it down to meet this. I would actually bring it lower if I felt like it needed it. Because remember, what I'm trying to get is a nice bumped shoulder there. Looking at this thickness, looking at this thickness. I don't think it's bad. I think I should go up a little bit. Okay. I'm going to call that good. Now, the challenge I'm going to face is that somewhere along here, these collets grapple the shank. And I have to think about how I want to resolve that. Okay. Interesting. When I'm looking at Maurice's drawing, I see them happening. I'm doing curve perpendicular from curve, line perpendicular from curve, both sides. I'm going to grab this outer profile. When I see what he's drawn there, the insidemost curve, this curve here, it seems to go somewhere about like that. Mirror that over with history. something like this. Okay. But I'm not really sure how that coincides with the dimensions I have in that top view. I'm going to let my background bitmap hide a bit. Bring this back. Yeah, see, if I look at the length of this, it's not really as wide as I have here. But it's not bad. It's better than I thought it would be. So if I move those out a little bit, I can actually check this. Analyze distance, mid-snap to mid-snap. 13. And then analyze length. Not that. That. It's 11, so it is shorter. Yeah, I need to add another millimeter on either side, and that's not a millimeter. So I'm going to go ahead and do my line perpendicular from curve, both sides. Here again, and I can actually visualize a line coming straight up from here and intersecting that like it was in a technical drawing. I think that that's about right. Mirror it over. Now, the trim, I tried to use history with it to see if I hoped it would update it. It didn't. So I have this little fragment of curve left hanging here, which is not useful. I can extend this. It's easy to do. Extend curve, select your boundary objects. Enter when done. Select curve to extend. Enter when done. Okay, that was easy to do. And it actually kept it a true arc, so I'm all right. But what would often happen is I would get extra control points here. Okay, extensions will often give you a poly curve. So it's usually not elegant math in your curve when you do that. I'm perfect. This is fine. But I'm going to show you what I would do by habit, just because I know how often that doesn't work out. By habit, what I would do is select these two new pieces of geometry that I want to keep. Copy, Control C, copy to the clipboard, so they're outside of Rhino. Okay? And then I would undo. Until that trim was gone. I would delete these two curves. And then I would paste, Control V. It would bring them back. And then use those to trim. That way I know it's still my original circle and everything stayed tidy. That's just hygiene. It's just what I would normally do so that I'm assured that it's working well. Okay? Okay. That's not bad. I'm actually going to untrim what I just did, though. I want this to be a little over long. So I'm going to, because I'm going to be using this as flow information later in the modeling process. And you don't ever want your flow information to be exactly the same size as your elements, as your motif, as the geometry you're going to flow. So I'm going to offset this, well, a couple millimeters. Yeah, both sides there. And then I'll trim it away. I'm going to make sure I throw those away because I'm going to have plenty of other curves here. I don't want those to confuse me. They were just to trim this. The next thing I am going to draw is the width for this box. Analyze the distance. 5.226 millimeters, so I'm going to call it 5 millimeters because that seems. Let's take a look at my bitmap. All right. No, it is about that wide. Okay, I'll give it 5 1/4. So it's easy enough to do. Offset 5 millimeters. Offset 5 millimeters. Okay. Now I know that these are going to taper slightly as they come into the center of my ring. And I know I also get a strange angle here that I'm not really thrilled with. That's all okay, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box. Then I can throw these away. Okay, can throw these away too. I am going to mirror with history. Okay, I want a C-plane set to this directionally when I'm through with it, but I'm not through with it yet. So I'm going to rotate this. So that I get an angle that's friendly kind of to both things. It's going to be a little bit steep for the shoulder and a little bit open for the top. Okay. I don't think I want to do much more than that. I'll try rotating it a little bit more. But actually, I don't think I want to. I think I want to leave that where it is. Now I'm going to put my ellipse back in. Here. Doesn't matter how wide it is, I'm just using it for a C-plane. And that'll give me the directionality in a C-plane that I need to do my tapering, which is the next thing I'm going to want to do. Easiest way to taper this is going to just be to turn on the control points, grab the bottom two, do a non-uniform scale. And I want something that looks like a nice taper. Okay, so something like that. Make sure you don't change a scale here that you don't want. I don't want this to change in this direction. So I need to make sure that's not 1.173, that's just 1 for 100%, and z-axis 100%. Notice how nicely that updated for me over there, which is nice. And I'm going to now, the top is actually the width that I want. So I'm going to move this straight down. I'm going to look at it again and see if I think I get enough taper. Still, I don't. I'm going to turn on the control points, non-uniform scale them again. I can use that center snap, or I can use mid. Doesn't matter. And what I'm looking at, guys, is what happens up here in that box. Okay. Going to move it down again. Now, actually, I have to be careful. I have to leave enough elevation that I actually have room for my half-rounded flutes there. I have to visualize how much metal I think I need to make 3 loops, 3 flutes. Boom, boom, boom. That's probably more than I need. I want to minimize it because anything I do over here is going to be more exaggerated over here. It just is. I think I can come down even a little bit more. Going to go back to my top C plane. So, which I did by just hitting T enter. It gives me a little better view of what's going on. I think I want to rotate this in a little bit more. Now my origin of rotation becomes important. I want to keep it close to here. See if I can take some of that distortion out, how high that is. And I've decided I really do need to probably bring this down a little bit. Since it is the center, I don't want this to become thinner than this is here. I want it to still feel more important, and I think that works. That's starting to give that a little bit less of a craziness. Okay? Through there. And, yeah, I think that's okay. I think that's all right. Move this down just a little bit more. Picturing my 3 flutes. And I think I'm good. I think that's a good place to pause with that. Okay, so I have that. Now, so I've sketched the front view and I've sketched the top view for this ring. Now I need to start getting some actual lengths and dimensions that make sense for this piece. I need to know how long to draw this out flat, and what I want to do that with is really going to be primarily this curve. While I have it here, I want to make sure that my seam for my closed curve, remember it's always important where you put a seam on a closed curve, I want it at the bottom. Rhino always draws them on the side by default. Curve, edit tools, and there it is. So hit quad, grab this one, bring it around. It's good to remember that when you actually draw the curves the first time, but if you don't remember it, then get it as soon as you can, because when you start to flow the surfaces you're going to make, that seam can really mess you up if it's over here. All right, so I've got that in position. I need to know how long this is. Analyze length, 67.387 millimeters. That's what I want. So 67387. Start at 0. Pull it out to the side, and there we have it. Grab the midpoint of that curve so I can center it. Point to move from is its midpoint. Point to move to is 0. Change this to my green layer. Okay. So, now we see a couple of things. I am going to move this. Use end snap. Go ahead and move those in tight. Move these in tight. And I'm going to need to move this end piece to the end of that curve. So I'll go ahead and do that. Turn on my points. Use mid snap and int, or mid and end. Middle, end. Okay. Now in reality, if I'm going to make an actual shank from this, and I may as well incorporate that. This actually, if I wrap this, there's going to be a V here. I don't want a V. So what I would actually do is put a piece of reference curve in, do a curve, extend by arc to point. Okay. Explode that. throw that away. Remember, extensions always tend to give you a poly curve. We don't need that little fragment anymore. It served its purpose. I'm going to mirror this with history. And the beautiful thing is that because this is an arc, it was extended by arc to point, your arcs are almost always 3-2 curves, second degree curvature, 3 control points. And there it is. Remember how we spoke at length last semester about how if you have 3 points in a right straight line, you have a straightness? Well, this was tangent off of a straight curve. So if I move this, holding Shift key, that smoothness will maintain, and I can demonstrate that just for the points of demonstrating it. If I mirror this over here, and I'll change its color to make it clear that it's just for example. I turn that point back on my parent curve. Even if I take this curve all the way to here, there's still a smoothness through here. See that? And we need that. When this shank is curved around the bottom of your finger when you flow it, you don't want to have a kink here. So we need that smoothness, okay? But we probably don't want this much of a swoop to our shank that came from the automatic extension, the default extension. To see, we're going to go ahead and bring back our image. Stop that. My mouse is actually running out on me. Okay, so see how straight this looks and how fat that looks compared to this? We can't have this tapering that fast. So I'm going to F10, turn on the points. And back that off again, so I get some fullness. See, our friendly designer has drawn a very tiny shank here and a big fat shank there, and he's given us no room to transition it. Designers are famous for this sort of thing, just so you know. I hate to speak ill of my own kind, but there you have it. So it is important that, we get a little more of a dramatic. That'll work, okay? Now I can move this curve all I want, this point all I want. And this smoothness will remain. So I can now decide if I want to butt this up a little bit. And that's really going to be a matter of keeping that flute here. And also thinking, you have to think always three-dimensionally, guys, that there's going to be we've already seen it in the front view. There's going to be a steep hop here. We're going to cheat and soften that. But there's going to be a pretty stiff hop there. With that stiff hop, and if you only have a little tiny corner here, it makes three-dimensionally something weird. If it's just a tiny little step. So if I widen this to here, okay, and all I had was that tiny little step, but I have the huge three-dimensional z-axis drop, it's going to look funny. So I really need to keep this pretty much what it is. I can give it a little bit of weight. But that's all I can afford to do. Okay? And I will stop. I can throw away my box. I can throw away this. And I'll mirror these over with history. Okay? So now you can see we're starting to get a drawing. Yeah, it moved accidentally. Okay, fine. I don't care. Sorry for the loud ringing sound. I can resolve that here. That'll help. Okay. All right, so I have drawn those elements. Now I need to draw my remainder of my top view. Okay, I'm going to explode this. I'm going to divide this curve by 3. Transform tab, control points, divide curve by number of segments, which is right click. Number is 3. Let's actually make it 6, because we may want that. We may want to be able to see the midpoints on these flutes. Curve, offset, both sides option. Through point. Okay, so that's our central rib, and then these two are, you know, pretty good by association. I'm going to trim this. And then I want to bulge this. And to bulge it, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to make sure it's 3 points. I need 3 points, so I'm going to rebuild it. Because right now it's a straight line, which is always 2, 1. I want an arc. I want 3, 2. I may change that later, but right now I want that. And then I don't want to put on my control points. I want to put on my edit points. Turn those on. Looks the same, but remember with an edit point, the curve follows through whatever you do. Okay, so if I grab this, that curve is going to stay tight through the point, which I want. But I want history and symmetry, so I'm going to record history, mirror. When I hit mirror, guys, I don't say anything, so you're going, what's he doing? I have history recorded. Remember, mirror is F2 on our shortcuts, so I just hit F2. Start of mirror plane. If you remember, F4, I could have just typed in 0 also, but F4 is 0 on our shortcuts. So I just hit F2, F4, and then hold my mouse out to the side with Shift key to get what I want. Okay, that's why you don't hear much. You hear click, click. But I say mirror, and I figure we all know what that is by now. So turn on the points, grab the center point, and see how that swells? I think that's going to be pretty good. But I would like to have a more accurate way of looking at that. So I'm going to record history. And this distance is the same as this distance. So if I offset through point, catch mid snap, and if I mirror that with history, F2, F4, and now I turn on my points. Actually, I want my edit points, so edit point, and I grab this and I move it. See what happens? And it keeps me a static width. And by doing this, I can look at it and see if I like what I have. I have in mind what this looks like. I'm going to go ahead and shut that down for a minute so I can see my drawing more clearly. And I can play with this point a little bit using Shift key the whole time. I don't want a really exaggerated arc on the outside, but I definitely want an arc. I think that this is pretty true and pleasing, so I'll keep it. Okay? The problem I have now that I've done that just deleting those points because they're confusing to look at for you more than me. I'm going to want to scale this all in, okay, until the outside matches the width, because I need the width to be this width. So, transform, non-uniform scale. I don't want any scaling here, so that's 1 for 100%. I do want scaling here. Now, I'm being kind of fussy because I did this all by eye. I don't even know what this dimension of this width is, but I might as well stay true to it. And I want no change in the Z. I broke a lot of history doing that. I was aware I was going to. I scaled a bunch of kids. But now I have what I need. I want to look at this and see, because when I non-uniform scaled it, I kind of took out some of this arch. I might want to put some of that arch back in. Okay, I can do that. And to show you that I can do that, let's just go ahead and do it. To do this, I'm going to need to offset this curve again with history. Through point here. Okay. I should throw this away first or it's going to get confusing. I'll have two curves in the exact same place, which does not make it easy for you guys to follow what I'm doing. And then mirror this. Same recipe we had before. Turn on my edit points again, like I did before. Okay? But this time, since the width is what I want to keep, I'm going to move the outside points. And once again, because it's edit points and not control points, this center point will stay put. The curve will pass right through it. Okay? So see, I can keep the overall width and start tapering it in a little bit. Okay? That's nice. All right? Now my next question is, how much is this distance compared to these distances? Because I want the effect of static flutes. And with the recipe I've done with the offsets and everything, this is going to want to be thicker. So let's find out. Analyze distance, intersect 4.3. Repeat the command. 3.9. Okay? I need to take off, well, I'll just make a 3.9 millimeter circle. Great way to measure using regular drafting tools or in CAD. Just make a circle radius. Make that radius 3.9. Okay? I didn't type in radius. Radius 3.9. That's where I want to bring this down to. So, turn on the points. I'm going to hope that I have I've got a good symmetrical point layout here. I'll grab these two outer points, each side. Pull it down. Rhino will be angry, because I broke history between this curve and this curve, but these two are still associated. I want a curve that kind of makes sense and yet doesn't seem overly skinny. The flute doesn't get either fat or disproportionate to everything else. I'm happy with that. And so I can now delete these outside lines. And I'm not sure what I want to do here. I'll wait and see. I don't have to tidy this up. These elements, these curves can just stay as they are for my centerpiece. I'm actually going to group them now. Control G. Throw away my reference curve. So I'm starting to really get a sense of this drawing flat. All right. The next thing I need to do are these side flutes. These are not bellied. These are very straight. I mean, there's a slight roundness, but that's because they're rounded to follow the shank. They're a straight bar. Okay, so that makes our lives much easier. Explode the curve. Divide. Transform. By number. We'll do 6 again. Just going to copy. Point snap. Okay, so now I have a center line and a dividing line for each one of those flutes. Okay. Now, when I looked at Maurice's drawing, it seemed to me that the center flute was actually longer than the rest. I'm not sure I like that idea. I'll look at it again. If it's really actually that way, I'll have to obey that. This one is longer on top, but it almost seems accidental. Maybe slightly longer. Okay, I'll think about it as I'm drawing, whether I want to be true to that or not. I need to draw my flutes. Okay, so my first flute, I'm going to actually split this curve. Just so I can use this portion of it to flow, or I mean to flow, but to blend and work with however I want to develop the inside edge of this. I might want this to come straight out. I might not. I might want it to be a soft, rounded feeling. I can't decide. I don't know for sure what I want to do with that right now. I'm thinking. I'm designing as I'm model making. It's going to want to fall open. I know that from my front view. So I think having a vertical buy-in here is not a bad idea. So I'm going to trim this off. And do a blend curve. An adjustable blend curve. And that'll keep this coming in a vertical. I'm going to hold down the Shift key while I adjust this, because that'll give me a symmetrical treatment on both sides. I'm good with that. Now I want to draw the other side of this. I'm going to create that by extend by arc to point. And just draw something that looks nice. That's sufficient for me. And then I will fillet it off. Now for the next one, I want to do a regular arc. So I'm going to give me a reference curve, like in mechanical drafting, a construction line straight across. Because I need a point here, here, and here to make my arc. So curves, arc tool, cascade arc. I want arc 3 points. So I have int, you do the top, beginning and end, and then you pick the middle. Now this is where I can decide if I want this to be a little fatter than the others. I think I do, but not a lot. Okay, that's where that works. Now this I almost have to, this is going to be a very strange flute. I'm actually going to let it be a little lower. Maybe. It gets iffy. I'm going to sketch it, see what I think. Just going to draw something in here. And see if I think I can get away with it. I really want to chop off some of this height right through here. I think I can. I think I can get away with it. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to lower this down a little bit. Fill it. Gonna split this so I can do a blend curve like I did with the innermost flute. Adjustable curve blend from here to here. And I'm going to play with that a little bit. I can throw that away. Now I'm going to do an extend by arc to point. Like this. Okay. My only problem with it is it's ugly. And I knew it would be. And it doesn't come down lower here, which I want it to. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to rebuild this. 3 and maybe 7 would be good. Turn on my points. And draw something I like. You know what? Maybe I don't need. I'll let it come down a little bit. Turn on my graph. See this kink? That's because it's third degree math. I don't like that. 7-4. See how that went away? Fourth degree has no kinks. Which is why I like it so much. I do want this to come as high as that line, more or less. And I need this to come off smooth, which is easy. We did this a lot last semester to guarantee tangency off a straight line. Move point on top of point. Leave it selected. Move again. From, click anywhere, to, hold down the shift key. And as long as you hold the shift key down, that will be smooth. Now, you can see that we have a flip. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And that flip goes away. Hold the shift key down so that I keep that transition, that smoothness, that tangency. That's good. Last thing I need to do is to make this match that. With only 3 points, I don't have a lot of control. See? If I move this down, I'm going to get a weird sort of shape. So I'm going to rebuild this with more points. 7-4 works good. Then I'll just take this point and move it down. Put on my grid for a minute. Sweeten this up a little bit. That works for me. And that's the top view of my collet and its flutes. I am not going to want this to be a compound curve. This probably is going to need more than 7 because it's got some sophisticated things going on. I'll go 10. Curvature graph on. Points. I hate those little sub-anchors. Get rid of that. Get that out of the way for now. I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other side. Point, point, shift key. Point, on top of point, shift key. Grab both of these maybe and move them down a touch. My curvature graph says I have some very weird things happening, but it doesn't look so strange to me. That's okay. Great. I'm going to mirror these over. I'm actually going to do myself a favor and actually delete these lines. And this line. And this line. Mirror these over. And then draw fresh lines. Because there was a lot of splitting and whatnot going on. And I'm going to also get rid of these lines. And I'll do that by line, both sides, intersect, grab this. I'm going to pull it longer. Than the original lines. I want it clear that they're construction lines and that I can use them for doing intersections and things later. Throw these away. Pick up this whole assembly, mirror it over. Okay, I'm almost done. The last thing I need to do is to bring in, to flute this. So, points from the transform toolbar, right click for number, 6 again, explode. Now this becomes odd because we need to keep the outline on this outside. And if we offset this, you'll see we lose the whole center line, which we don't want. So what we're going to do, exactly what I just did. I'm going to offset it. I'm going to mirror it with history. Okay. I'm going to draw another line. Remember, I talked about this when we were sketching technical studies, that you break a shank into fourths to know where halfway is. For us, we really just need to know what halfway of this distance is. And I can get that a couple of ways. The easiest way is going to be circle diameter from there to there, and then a straight line through the center, both sides. Shift key, delete the circle, trim, and divide. Really only need 3, but it's not worth putting in another number. It's just easy to do it that way. Now I'm going to grab this non-uniform scale at this point, because that origin, we can't, origin in a scale class is where you don't want anything to change. I don't want anything to change right here. I want that to stay. I don't want to scale in this direction, so nothing. I want to scale in this direction. I'm going to pull that out until it pretty much goes through that point. Nothing in the Z. Now I know that I set history to that. Somehow it didn't obey me. So, fine. I'm going to look at that. This looks awfully straight for the swoopiness of what's going on over there. But that's okay. That's alright. I'm going to do it a little bit more. Nothing in this direction. And just a little bit in this direction. Take it as close to through that point as I can. In fact, the middle always seems a little bit pinched to me, the middle flute. I'll give it a little extra. And 0. There. Don't need any of that anymore. I don't need any of my points, so select points, look for juggling popcorn, delete. Once again, I don't care if these curves are too long. That works fine for me. And I have the top view of my ring. Okay. Next thing I want to do, so I want to bring my front view into the proper orientation. I'm going to lock my green lines. Select all of my front view. Right C-plane because I want to rotate it up. So I need that steering wheel to be on that right C-plane. Center of rotation 0 because we want to keep it around the middle. Hold my shift key and point out towards the top of that view and rotate it up into three-dimensional space. I know, I don't care. Back to top C-plane. Now that front drawing sits flat on the front C-plane. My views are now in proper location. I've got some good information that I can use in that front view. I've got plenty of information to work off of on the top view, and I can commence with my surfacing. That's the drawing. That's what I expect you to get finished. Thanks so much for watching.